Hi, Cleo.
Okay, we're ready. How did you decide whether or not you wanted to have kids?
It just started like a natural flower blooming in my mind that, okay, maybe children.
I grew up thinking I would become a mom because I didn't know that I could choose not to be.
I am so glad I don't have children.
I knew I was always going to have kids.
I decided to start thinking seriously about getting pregnant myself.
I've literally had people upset at the fact that I don't want to have children, but I'm like, how does that affect your life?
Especially like factoring in everything that's happening in the background, including climate change. Is this the kind of world that I want to bring my child into?
This is what we wanted. This was our goal, and we're here.
Whatever change you think your life is going to have in a significant way, multiply by like 99. Life blown up, completely gone.
The vast majority of Americans have kids, but the number of births in the US has been slowly creeping downward over the past few decades. I think I want to become a parent, and I'm lucky to be able to make that decision. To be honest, though, I still feel like there's so much that I don't know. So my question is, how do I decide if I really want to have kids?
You know, it's really hard to separate out my desire to have kids versus the expectation to have kids. And if you don't believe that there's still an expectation of having children, just turn on the television.
So, when are the kids coming?
You gotta have a baby.
You gotta have one now.
People like pregnant.
Do you want to be a mother or not?
You regret it, not having children.
There is the stigma. If you don't have kids, then you're clearly not as happy.
A lot of us have real questions about when and how and whether to become parents. So I'm gonna get some data. And why not start with that big assumption, that kids make you happier?
Since about the 1960s, we've had pretty clear evidence that being a parent doesn't make you happier than not having children. Out of the 20 countries that we studied, the United States had the largest gap where parents report that they're significantly less happy than non-parents.
How do you ask survey questions that get at this?
We're not asking people, are you happy you had kids? We're asking people, are you happy? And just asking them to rate their own level of happiness.
It's not just the United States. We see the happiness gap in all of these countries, too.
It's really a parental happiness deficit, and it doesn't occur everywhere. There are a few nation states where parenthood actually improves your average rated happiness, and some of those countries have extremely low fertility rates. That's telling you that people who do decide to have children are unusually attached to kids and want kids very badly. Now, we do have some LGBT couples in the data, but they differ in size across all of these nations, and some nation states did not even ask about the gender of your partners. We're just beginning to understand the dynamics and whether they're similar or different from heterosexual couples.
Does the happiness gap differ depending on wealth, race, gender, or other demographics within the United States?
It really doesn't. We thought perhaps that the gap would be larger for single parents, and it is. We thought perhaps the gap would be larger for mothers than fathers, and it isn't. It grows when you take away the partnership and the stable employment. But once you control for those factors, it's fairly stable across race.
How do parents react, though, when you tell them about this data?
Oh, they hate it. Some of them don't believe it. I have to show them the data from one survey after another. But if we asked parents, have your children made you happy? They would all say yes. I would say yes. Everybody I know would say yes. But what their children have brought into their lives in many ways is anxiety, stress, and financial trouble that they would not have experienced.
Did you know about the happiness gap?
I did.
What's your take on how seriously we should take this data?
I might be a little biased because I've always been quite ambivalent about the idea of having children, but I think it's worth taking very seriously. There is a huge cultural myth that kids are going to bring nothing but joy to your life, and I think that leads a lot of parents going in with maybe the wrong expectation.
I gotta say, I look at this data and I think to myself, yikes. And then I think I
probably still want kids. Like, it's such a weird...
Why?
I don't know.
If you think about it, our species has been around for 300,000 years. The ability to control female reproduction is about 60 years old. Cultural and economic liberation for women is still in progress. We are among the first generations of life on Earth, which is the only life that we know of in the universe, that can choose not to reproduce. To me, that's incredibly exciting. But the act of making that decision final, I still wish I had more time.
That's another part of this that I feel really anxious about.
Our biology does not keep up with our social progress. And that makes me so angry. Can I tell you, like, the cosmic injustice of this, that, like, just as you're starting to feel comfortable in your own skin, maybe you've started to build something, that's when you're slapped with this decision that, hey, you need to turn your life upside down right now, or you can't have a family. I mean, in the biological sense.
Maybe people with kids are this like crazy club of like unhappy people that want you to join them, but that sort of just discounts all the other parts.
I don't think it captures just like the fulfillment that you receive. I mean, I just love every moment. Like, she opens up her hands to hold her bottle. Like,
Having a child, beautiful thing, beautiful feat. But I feel like there's just so much stress surrounding it, especially in this country. And I think that's the main issue of just like, I like the way things are right now. But with where things are now, I need to make a hard decision.
I am a single mother of 4 daughters. There isn't anyone else coming to share that load with you. But these are the girls. These are my girls where if they saw me tear up, they would go fix up a sandwich and they'd be like, hey, do you want to eat something?
I was raised a girl. The world taught me that my needs mattered less than literally everyone around me. And so I think actually the best thing I can do for my family is to be happy. Sometimes that means when you get in the car and they're like, oh, can we listen to my music? You say, no, we're gonna listen to my podcast. And they might whine, but it makes me way happier and way less resentful that I'm listening to Row Your Boat for the 80th time today. Like,
scooch down towards me. Ready? All right. A lot of pressure here. This is a view of your uterus. Where? This whole thing here. It's kind of long, like an eggplant or a banana. For a woman who's never been pregnant, it's about the size of a bottle of nail polish. What we do is just take a look here, make sure everything looks pretty normal, which it does. Okay, we have plenty of great pictures.
Do I get to keep it like from a party?
Like a souvenir.
Wild. What do you feel like are the biggest misconceptions that you hear about the relationship between fertility and age?
That you have all the time in the world. With time, fertility does go down.
One of the best ways to see this is just the chance a person has of getting pregnant each month. Doctors call that fecundability.
Your mid to late 20s is actually when you're most fertile. It's about 15 to 25%. That can decrease to the mid 30s to about 10 to 15%. And unfortunately, over about age 42 to 44, it can be less than 2%.
One reason for this decline is the number of eggs that you have goes down as you age, egg quantity. But fertility is also about egg quality, or how many of those remaining eggs are chromosomally normal.
The vast majority of early miscarriage is actually due to chromosomal errors. A lot of people tend to think of children with Down syndrome or Turner syndrome, but those are the outliers.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we're gonna do a little visualization so that you can show us, for a person who can bear children, what percentage of their eggs are chromosomally normal on average as they get older. So blue is gonna be genetically normal eggs, and yellow is gonna be genetically abnormal.
Okay.
Okay, so this is 28, this is my age.
You have a really high chance of making a pregnancy or embryos with a normal number of chromosomes. But as you see, it's never going to be 0. So as you age to 33, there's a higher chance, maybe about 30 to 31% at this point. But around age 37 to 38, the chances of having a pregnancy with chromosomal abnormalities is almost 50%. That's a number that's very shocking to people. But, as we advance in age over 42, the chance gets quite high. It's now over 80%. And so this contributes to why women in that age group may have a harder time getting pregnant and may unfortunately experience miscarriage much higher than they were when they were younger. Sometimes we're able to make generalizations based on your age, but the only way to know for sure is an evaluation of your own individual reproductive health.
What do you see as the most important disparities to talk about with respect to access to fertility care?
Cost is probably one of the biggest factors. One cycle of IVF can typically be about $15,000 to $20,000.
IVF isn't the only option, but all of the options aren't cheap and often not covered by insurance.
Something else is looking at the differences in outcomes based on race and ethnicity. There are studies that show women of color are referred to infertility specialists less frequently, and that may play into why they present later for care or with longer periods of infertility.
What can we do to reduce those disparities?
I think the first thing we have to do is acknowledge it. We all have implicit biases that govern how we conduct ourselves and how we react to different people in different situations. The patients that are visiting fertility clinics tend to be white, female, college educated, and wealthy because that's who can afford the treatment. And so one of the biggest things I personally would wish for is infertility evaluation and treatment to be covered by health insurance universally.
We found out about the fertility benefits. We met those requirements to be able to enroll, and we got started with our IVF process. And here we are with this little one today.
I'm incredibly privileged in that it cost me literally $0 to get pregnant because of the particular biological realities of my relationship. We had sperm, egg, uterus between the two of us, but most transgender people need some help with some part of that.
As I got older, what I learned was that as a Black woman, I was at even more risk for complications and death after childbirth, and it didn't instill any confidence in me.
I recently helped my sister inject herself. She was freezing her eggs. That was just a very powerful moment.
I knew I was going to have kids. That was never an issue. The bigger thing was, what would you do strategically in order to make sure you could maximize your career, which was important for me.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
What are we doing here?
So, there's a lot of data that shows that the financial impact of having a child isn't born equally by men and women. So we're gonna visualize that.
Okay.
Ready?
I think so.
I feel very cool.
We're like cave explorers.
Let's do it.
This looks so tall.
A 2017 report from the U.S. Census Bureau shows the impact of having a child on men and women's earnings among married heterosexual couples. Ready, Krista?
I'm scared.
The key chart looks something like this. The male and female spouse both start out at 0 the year the baby is born. It's a way to control for differences between men and women's earnings so that we see the effects of having kids more easily. In the first year after having a child, the mother's earnings take a big hit. The father's, not so much. So, Christoph, this is year 1.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Huge hit.
The female spouse's earnings don't actually recover until the child is around 9 years old.
So essentially, at year 9, the mom's salary has reset to where it was.
Yeah. All right, ready?
Yeah.
Year 18.
18.
Go on up. Look at me climb the career ladder.
Though her earnings do increase as the child gets older, the gap between the two genders is still there by the time that kid is officially an adult. One huge factor here is unequal childcare responsibilities. According to the American Time Use Survey, on an average day, women spent more than double the amount of time providing physical care to children than men.
Yeah, I mean, so much of this makes sense thinking about my mom's career.
Yeah?
You know, she took off work until I was 6 or 7. It was great that she was able to do that, but it's a hard trade-off to have made.
Yeah. Christoph, one more thing.
Yeah?
Look down.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now we're done. is that?
You know, managed. I'm a little sore. I feel like we could have printed that chart out, but it's fine.
I really wanted to know if there was like a good or a bad time to have kids.
Like,
I really wanted
ideal
someone to
window?
like time it perfectly for me, you know? Like, what's interesting is the data shows that for couples who have children under 25 or over 35, the female spouse takes an earnings hit, but actually does catch back up to the male partner.
Interesting.
But for the couples that have kids between 25 and 35, the female partner never catches up.
But it seems to sort of show that there is this core window, 25 to 35, where you are starting your career, setting yourself up for a successful life. And that's a hard window to have a kid.
The thing about that data, though, is that it's so wrapped up in socioeconomics and education that it's really hard to tell what it means.
Yeah.
Over the course of the last couple days, I've learned that the fertility data tells you that probably the safer choice to have kids on the earlier side, and the career data implies you might take less of a hit if you have kids later, which is a little frustrating.
This question of should you have kids or not is such a completely different question professionally for men than it is for women.
You were prioritizing being at home and changed jobs to do that.
That's true.
Why was it you who made that choice and not Dad?
Well, it wasn't completely voluntary. You know, when I went back to work after Zoe, I basically was told, okay, you're on the mommy track now. I was young and very ambitious, and I just thought I could do everything, no matter what the environment. And that turned out not to be true.
I'm really afraid of that.
Yeah, well, you can suss out your environment a bit. There were no women who were associates who had babies who had gone on to make partner. I should have learned from that.
I don't think that's fair to put on yourself. It really frustrates me that we position this as an individual choice. Like, the other option is your law firm could have supported you more.
Yes, and they were not prepared to do that.
You know, nobody that I've spoken to ever expected parenting to be easy. Like, I definitely don't. But I keep thinking about this chart and where the United States falls, and I can't help but wonder if it has to be this hard. So my last question is just, what could we do to make it easier to be a parent in the United States? And one thing that we could do is make childcare more affordable. There's a new report that just came out that shows, as a percentage of women's full-time earnings, how much do women have to pay for childcare in each of these countries? So each stack of coins represents a woman's median full-time earnings in each place. And we're gonna take out coins to represent the amount of her earnings that she's gonna spend on childcare.
Okay.
All right, so I'm not gonna touch any of these, but I'm gonna take one out for Germany.
So you removed for Germany, but not for Chile, the Czech Republic, or Italy.
Yeah, for the most part, governments in these countries provide a lot of support.
Wow.
So now we've got all of these countries. Let's see what that looks like. 5 Korea, 6 Iceland, 7 Portugal. By the way, this is like $500 worth of food.
Yes. 19. So it looks like for all of these countries, they are here spending, what, a quarter of their earnings, but that is still a significant chunk of money to be spending on childcare.
Right? That's a huge chunk, even in the middle of this chart.
Finland is already getting into territory that looks very different from Germany, so I'm scared to see what happens.
So the United States is here among a small group of countries where women spend more than a third of their full-time earnings on childcare.
That is very scary.
So this is Australia.
Whoa.
Let's get rid of all of that.
Should I do Canada?
Yeah, 34th. So there it is.
I'm trying to get a sense of why there's so much disparity across the board on this side, from Germany to Italy. Like, what is it that countries on this end are not doing?
Denmark, for example, mandates that parents can't be charged more than 25% of the operating cost of childcare, and the government covers the rest.
Okay.
In Korea, they were very concerned about falling birth rates, and so they spend a lot of money on supporting parents, and one of the things that they do is they offer cash benefits.
Wow, so it sounds like parents there are incentivized to actually have kids.
Yeah. Given that finances are a really big part of the decision to have kids for a lot of people, it does seem like that decision would be less burdensome in a lot of these other countries than it would be for a lot of parents in the United States.
I've gone through this whole journey learning about parental happiness data and fertility data and earnings data and having it help me as I'm making this decision. The truth is, I'm not going to be making this decision based on statistics. I'm going to be making this decision based on my own feelings and my own family and my own potential family. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is I really, truly, over the course of my life, would love to do for another person what you did for me. And I would love to be the kind of mom to somebody that you were to me.
Girl now, she's 6 months old today.
And I would love to have the kind of relationship as an adult that you and I have now. And I just wanted you to know that.
Thank you, Cleo. That means a lot to me.
And it really is a big part of my decision making.
A walk down the street is torture, very slow, but also every single thing suddenly is incredibly interesting. There is a bug. Holy cow! Who knew that bug had so many legs?
Whenever you're ready.
I think there are lots of ways to have kids in your life in meaningful ways that aren't being a parent, and that those ways are just as valuable, just as valid, if not more so.
Say auntie?
I always just tell people, if you don't really want to do it, don't. Do something else.
I feel this very deep calling to my work, and that's what I've chosen to dedicate my life to. I found it already. I don't need anything else.
Since I don't have children, I'm able to be there for my family in ways that I probably wouldn't be able to if I had children, and I take a lot of pride in that. There's so many things that can give you purpose, not just being a parent.
What's important to you? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want your life to look like?
Cleo, wave bye-bye to Zoe.
And then go do it.
How much is the UK?
51.
Wow. Sorry. Yeah, got it. This is not a story about the UK, but damn. I'm gonna get an ultrasound on camera.
No.
Yep.
That's cool.
Babies.
Oh, babies!
Speaking of children.
Hello, children! I didn't deliberately match the date of his, but I did, in fact, do that.